Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we are back with a pay-per-view recap. Last week we had UFC 323, two title fights, and what was overall a pretty good card from early prelims all the way up to the prelims, and that extended into the main card. Obviously, the only hiccup in that was the co-main event. Um, we'll talk about that in a second, but that was really the only negative from a viewing perspective, at least. And then at the end of our UFC 323 recap, we are going to touch on this week's upcoming card: Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape in what could be a number one contender fight. We'll obviously talk about that at multiple different spots in the show because we've got several flyweight fights that we'll be talking about today. And per usual, we will start at the top of the main card. Petr Yan, Merab Dvalishvili. Yan went out there. He reclaimed the title, won the rematch, and for him, what ended up being a pretty massive victory. Anthony, we can swing it over to you first. What did you make of Jan's title victory?
I thought it was amazing. We've all said how good Merab's looked, and he's looked untouchable at times, and like, God, is anyone ever gonna beat him? And then Peter Yan probably goes out there and turns out maybe like the perfect performance against him, and really demolishes him a little bit. I think maybe if I had Merab winning one of those rounds, maybe, but I thought it was a pretty clean win there, and he did it in all facets through with takedown defense, some clinch work. I liked the striking he was doing, the body works too, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So it was a really overall just amazing performance.
Yeah, I mean, this just caps off the hell of a journey that Petr Yan's been on since he lost 3 fights in a row, lost his belt, and all of that. Now it's, I think, his fourth win in a row, and he looked damn good. He looked about as good as I think we've ever seen him, which is scary considering how good he was when he first won the title against Jose Aldo. Again, like you said, stopping Anthony, as you said, stopping 27 of 29 takedowns is impressive. And I was also surprised that he was willing to take down Merab and did that, I think, 5 out of 9 times and looked really good doing it. Was picking him up, throwing him down, and just controlling in every single facet of the fight and did it in dominating fashion.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good indicator of how the fight went. Merab shot 30 times, landed two. Jan shot 9 times, landed five. Like, if you were going to throw those numbers out there before the fight, you'd be like, oh, yeah, Piotr's probably going to run him over if that's the way the takedowns are going to go. And I thought that's what happened. I thought Jan dominated that fight. I would have scored at 50-45. I thought the commentary was slightly, I don't want to say biased, but maybe incorrect or misleading is the better word. I think they tried to sell that as a little bit of a closer fight than it was. And specifically 3-4-5 turned into quite the beatdown. Um, and I thought that the actual scorecards were fairly bad as well. I'm not going to get too up in arms over 49-46, but I don't know how you find 2 rounds for Merab in there. You could find one, and I'm not really going to complain. But like I said, I had it 50-45, Jan, and dominated, hurt him to the head once or twice, definitely at least once, but hurt him to the body on multiple occasions, defended takedowns. And what was really important is when he did defend takedowns, he was able to get off the fence and prevented Merab from really turning one takedown attempt into 7. So that I think was a big factor of that as well. But yeah, it was a complete dismantling of Merab Dvalishvili. And I guess one more thing I'll add quickly is Jan's cardio also looked tremendous because Merab brought the pace, and Jan fought at the pace that Merab brought for 5 rounds and came out the better of the two.
Yeah, I think it's we talk about Merab's cardio and stuff, but like I think sometimes people like don't go to the body because they're like, oh, it's pointless. Like he's never gonna get tired, and it's like no, going to the body has way more benefits than, of course, obviously make wanting to make someone more tired, maybe in the fourth or fifth. One, you can do damage to it, like we were saying. There's no big protection over the liver and everything. So you can get those huge reactions. But also, the more you mix up shots and go to the body, the more it does open up shots if you want to look out for that knockout shot to the head or anything too. So I thought that was um, really big that I hope people continue with. And then I also I liked too with in context of Jan's takedowns, his takedown defense. I thought it reminded me of Sanhagen. He was just quicker. There was just no mat returns, and he was quicker at fighting the hands and like kind of getting up to the fence, which I thought was important because I did think Corey showed a good amount of takedown defense. He just got mat returned, and I thought that was the difference in this one a little bit too. Is when Jan was in those positions, he was just getting out of them a lot faster and getting back to keeping it onto the feet. Where obviously everyone would like to have that fight because that's where they think they'll have success against Merab is on the feet.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Sandhagen put in that good of a performance as well gave Jan more to look at, and especially since he had a full training camp. Unlike the first time they fought where he kind of got it on a shorter notice and had an injured, right hand was hurt or something like that. So him getting the full camp was massive. And you can see the preparation. I saw something of his coach who had, if Merab does this, here's what you do. If that doesn't work and he does something else, it was just a whole like spreadsheet of, or I guess a kind of a chart of, if Merab does this, you do this. And it was just well prepared. And that's what Jan looked like. Jan looked like he knew who he was going against, knew what Merab was going to do, and countered it in every single way possible. Ultimately, wearing down the body as well. I think he had the one kick in the 5th round that looked like Merab was just done at that point. And that's what he's dangerous with. We know how good his hands are, but his kicks are just so powerful as well. And he showed those off in a great way in this fight.
Yeah, and as far as game planning goes, like it was a great game plan, but on top of that, I don't think there's many fighters who you could make that complex of a game plan for and have it not just immediately like register in their mind during a fight. Like you have to have a level of like calmness to even think about all the things that you need to be doing in there. So for him to have that calmness and then the intelligence to actually apply that, like there aren't that many fighters that can just like come up with a great game plan and then follow it perfectly to a T over the course of 5 hard fought rounds. And then B, you have to have the skill to be able to do all these things. Like it's great to be able to say, oh, when Merab does this, you have to do this. But if he does that, then you now have to do this. Like all those things are great, but like he had the skill to do every single thing and every single reaction and every single different outcome that you could come up with. He had the required skills to do those things. So it's great game planning, but like the skill and the intelligence on top of that game planning to actually make it work and not just go in there and turn it into a brawl, I think is what is the thing that might have impressed me the most about kind of the thought process behind the performance, because those things aren't easy as well. And then from the things he was actually doing, thought the jab looked great. He was hitting him with the jab a lot. He was switching stances a lot. And when Jan switches stances, some weapons may be better from one stance to the other, but he still has a bunch of weapons from both stances. He's showing different looks, mixing head and body well. There was one of the body kicks he landed was like a left hook feint, and then that turns into the body kick behind it. And it's like, that doesn't work if you're not landing the left hook. So like all these different things that Jan was doing, from like the actual tools to applying those tools. I don't think there's many guys that could go, or probably not any, that could go out there and replicate what he did on Saturday.
Yeah, I liked the Merab with the left hand. I know they were, or sorry, Jan with his left hand. Merab was trying to hand fight and stuff, but Jan was keeping a pretty strong frame and like posting off and was doing great for distance management for the defense. But I just wanted to say too for Merab, I don't think that was his best night in the octagon, his best performance. That was his 4th time weight cutting this year and all that stuff. And maybe he said he went out there with the too striking heavy game plan. Then he shot 29 times, so I don't quite agree with that. That seems like he's kind of coping right there. But I will say, like, I still think you two can be true at the same time. I do think Jan just put on a masterful performance and was amazing in there. No, I don't think maybe that was the best Merab, but still, as is fighting, and that's why it's hard to be a champion, because if you kind of even have an off night, or if you're not at your absolute peak, anything can happen in there, and we'll see what they start saying about him cutting weight 4 times and everything, I'm sure. But this is one where I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a more immediate rematch type scenario for a champion, but we'll see what direction the UFC goes. You never know.
Yeah, and I mean, I was about to ask you guys the same question about what did you think? Do you think he was cutting weight 4 times was an issue? But I think I can't remember which one of you said it last week, but Merab, even in his last 2 fights, has looked more beatable and looked like there are ways to beat him, unlike the past 4 or 5 fights where he looked untouchable, unbeatable, and Jan just figured it out. And I wonder if that is part of the fatigue of fighting 4 times in a year, that eventually you're going to get beat. And that's the same with everybody. Every champion's eventually going to get dethroned. I think it's crazy that Merab is fighting 4 times a year as a champ, and I love to see it. I hope Petr Yan is just as active come 2026.
Yeah, the only spot where I kind of disagree, which I do agree with the sentiment that like the weight cuts is and the activity is like a seriously hard thing to do. I'm not denying that at all. The one thing that I do kind of think it plays another factor in this is Merab's style is so heavy on physical attributes. Obviously cardio, but like durability is a massive factor in his game plan as well. Strength once he's inside. So when you are really reliant on physicality and cardio and durability, and then like it's a lot easier for one part of the formula, no pun intended, to get mixed up, and then your whole game plan starts to fall apart. Next thing you know, you're not leveraging a cardio advantage. You're in there with a guy who has come in with great cardio as well, and things start to kind of fall apart from there. Because we talked about this on the preview show as well. Round 1 is typically a little bit closer for Merab fights, because that's when guys are at the same level of physicality and cardio. And in this fight, that just kind of the physicality and cardio edge didn't ever take over for Merab. If anything, Pete looked better in those late rounds than Merab did.
Yeah, that was. I think on the podcast I had said you're not winning, 4 or 5 if you want to win. He very much so won those 4 and 5. He looked incredibly good at those. I just had one more thing. It was about the Merab too. I understand the 4 the 4 weight cut points, but I was also I can't remember. I was also going to point out something, but sorry. I then thinking about how much Jan looked better in rounds 4 and 5 threw me off.
One thing I will add on the weight cuts is Jan has also very admittedly been like, yeah, I do it my own way. Or excuse me, not Jan, Merab has very admittedly been like, I do it my own way. I don't really listen to what those doctors or nutritionists or any of those guys say. And it's like, I don't know, man. I think they might just, maybe just listen to them. Maybe do a water load, and then you can come into the fight with a little bit more, be a little bit more hydrated, and maybe the pounds come off a little bit easier. Maybe they're scientists for a reason. Maybe everyone else in the UFC is doing it for a reason, and you're kind of doing it, the old school way, and you don't really need to do it that way anymore. So I do think that doesn't necessarily help his case. His stubbornness, and it feels like his attitude is more of a work harder and not even think about working smarter attitude. I think that is, and there's a level of that is certainly benefit Merab, but I think this fight was an example of where those things can be a negative.
Yeah, and I will say I like the rivalry that this is kind of becoming to an extent. And you saw there's a tweet after Merab beat Petr Yan the first time of him in a hot tub. I assume he was AI orientated. I can't imagine that Petr Yan was actually grilling up food for Merab after losing. But Yan clapped right back after this one, and I'm sure you guys saw that on Twitter, and it was very funny that these guys are having fun going at each other. And even Merab took the loss like the champion that he was, so he just admitted he got beat by the better guy.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. Like Merab in the pre-fight press conference being like, "Hey, come to the jacuzzi," and Jan was like, "Bro, I've never seen you in a jacuzzi with women ever. It's all men." And I was like, "Damn." That's how we're already feeling before the fight. That's why Jan probably we should have known already the way he was talking, how confident he was. But yeah, the final thing I wanted to say too, um, except for like we talked about the Merab for weight cuts. The other major point I think is just this is what happens when you fight the best of the best constantly. That's why as much as I might not find Merab's style the most entertaining, I can never hate on someone being that active because I'll take someone, going 3-1 against the best of the best than someone fighting 2 times. And just because they're undefeated, that makes them, better goat status. When I think if you compare resumes, I think continually beating and or fighting, the elite of the elite and the best fighters of your time is more important. So I will always commend Merab for that.
I think this, and to an extent, the co-main event, but that's a little bit of a different conversation. But the main event definitely, I think, is a great example of why title defenses should be so heavily equated. At least when I'm thinking of who's the GOAT or who's greater all time or who's the better guy in the weight class. I think title defenses is really undersold as a valuable statistic. And no shame to guys who go up and get the second belt. No shame to chasing things and different achievements. But man, the more that you see these title defenses fall apart before we even get to like 5, really puts into perspective some of the earlier title runs that were so impressive, but also the guys like Merab and like Pantoja who were on lengthier uh, runs of title defenses, how hard that is to do. And in Merab's case, doing it in a shortened span, and Pantoja's has come in a shorter span than average, just not as short as Merab's, but still in both cases, racking up those title defenses in a shorter span is so challenging, which I think gets undersold in a lot of discussions.
Yeah, I'm just curious about what Merab does next. As far as, do you think he'll be as active again in the next year? Or do you think he'll take some time off?
He made a tweet, and I wish I could remember exactly what he said, but he was complaining that the UFC wanted to wait to do the rematch. He was like, "Let's get in there ASAP. Let's get the show on the road, and we can be in there in the first quarter of 2026, and we can run this one back." And it's like, I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm not saying you got to wait a year. That'd probably be silly if you did that. But hey, maybe we don't need 3 months. Maybe we could use a fourth. Maybe we don't. But looks like he is really campaigning for a quick turnaround, and at least right now, the ball is a little bit out of his court with him not having the belt. That's part of the reason he was able to do that, is because he was fighting on his terms. Now he's kind of third man in the party of when he's going to fight behind the UFC and behind Jan. Before, he was a little bit more important in negotiations. So um, it'll probably be a little bit longer layoff than he would like.
I was just checking too. Looks like Jan's fought twice the past 2 years, or twice in each year for the past 2 years. So I mean that's a respectable timeline. I know some of those was because he was trying to get back to the belt too. So I would take 2 fights from him. Um, I for sure hope for one, of course. But yeah, like you were saying, it is on kind of Jan's timing now. But I don't think. I think hopefully one before summer and then maybe one before the end of the year is very realistic. And I'd imagine, Jerry, that still Merab, I would assume, gets that title shot. I don't know if the UFC has said anything about it specifically, but
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of very similar to what I was thinking. Is Merab is probably still going to want to fight and get back in as soon as possible. And whether it's a title shot off the bat, he still wants to fight for the belt next year.
Yeah, I think they're going to do the rematch. And when you look at the other guys that really could make a claim at a title fight, I think you're looking at the winner of Sean O'Malley versus Song Yadong. I think you're looking at the winner of Davison Figueiredo versus Umar Nurmagomedov. That one kind of has the asterisks of like, if Figgy wins, we're really not going to give him a title fight after some of his. He would be on 2 consecutive wins, but losses against Jan, losses against Sandhagen kind of kick him down the road, I think, a little bit for the title. But even when you look at the other guys, Merab has beat Umar and Sean twice, and Jan has beat Song and Davison Figueiredo. So they both kind of hold wins over those other guys that you're looking at as potential title challengers. So I don't think that Merab would get skipped for his first or for Jan's first title defense.
I think the only way that he gets skipped is if Sean O'Malley comes out and does something impressive, because that's one that, and then I could see that fight happening towards maybe the White House card, and they save that for Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley because they want to grow O'Malley's brand as much as he had. And I think Yan won that first fight. I think you guys think the same, don't you? So it's one that I'm sure the people that is, it's not wrong either way, but I think everyone would like to see that fight get run back again. So I think that's the only way that we don't get Merab and Yan is if O'Malley comes out and scorches Song Yadong.
That was my exact thought when you were saying Merab wants to hop in there early again, because I was like, oh, that would give them time to maybe force Sean to get a win, and then I know they would be loving that to put that on the White House card. But we'll have to see what happens. I saw Trump just said like 8 out of there'll be like 8 or 9 title fights, and there's like 11 divisions, and I don't know, maybe he's cooking. We'll see. Although that does mean there would have to be like 3 women's belts on the line. It's like, I don't know if we need that though.
Yeah, that's why he didn't say 11.
yeah.
That's why he said eight men's title fights and maybe 1 women's title fight.
Even I think this is going to turn out to a win-win scenario for the UFC, because I think if they decide they want to do Sean versus Petr at the White House, I think you could make that work. But I think Merab versus Petr is also a good, like, all right, we need a title fight for maybe the card before or after the White House because we're burning title fights at the White House. I think that would be a good fight for that to help fill out the schedule. So I think they're kind of operating with a win-win with Petr as a champ, whether it's Merab or whether it's Sean, because I'm sure there's more desire out there for that Sean and Petr rematch than a Merab and Sean trilogy. I can't imagine there would be any steam for that one. So I think the UFC is in a pretty good scenario. And as we've seen over the last couple of pay-per-views, they're willing to bend the rules a little bit for what works a little bit better for them. So I think they're in a good spot. All right, let's move down the card. Joshua Van becomes UFC champion in maybe not the most anticlimactic fashion, but we'll say maybe second most behind Aljamain Sterling. Well, at least one of the least anticlimactic title victories in UFC history. It's not his fault, but we had a elbow injury to Alexandre. Pantoja stopped the fight less than 30 seconds in. Jerry, we can swing it over to you first. What is your reaction to Joshua Van being the new flyweight champion as a result of an injury on the Pantoja side of things?
I thought Van was going to win the fight to begin with, but obviously did not think it was going to be this way. And I think it's just a really tough situation to be in, because on one side you're like, oh yeah, I'm now the champion, but on the other, not saying that he's not. It's like, you didn't really do anything to win the belt. You kind of just not put him down, and then he just fell on his elbow a weird way. So I'm not taking anything away from Joshua Van, but I don't know how that fight goes if they were to run it back in the future, or had it actually been a full fight instead of 26 or so seconds.
Yeah, that's the tough part. Is that was, to me, the most, entertaining fight, or what I thought was going to be the most entertaining fight on the card between, a phenomenal champion and one of the most highest surging prospects that's actually shown like great talent inside the octagon too. And first 20 seconds were looking pretty good too. Pantoja, came out there super aggressive, and then Van actually shoots first too, which is crazy. And then it's just an unfortunate like freak accident with the elbow injury, and it's unfortunate too for how old Pantoja is. I'm worried about the elbow too. We'll see how like the recovery time and everything is.
Yeah, that's the one detail here that we're kind of really missing is the Pantoja recovery time, and that kind of dictates, I think, what is next. Because I would love to see Pantoja be the guy who gets the next crack at it, but Josh Van has been a guy who has been on the more active side of fighters, and like if Josh Van's your champion and he's willing to fight once every 3 months, and Pantoja is saying I'm going to be out for a year, the UFC's going to be kind of put in a hard spot as much as you'd like to honor that guy in Pantoja who had a great run, and it absolutely sucks to see his run on that way. But at the same time, how do we turn Josh Van versus some of these, the division right now is in a great position. How do we turn down Van versus some of these potential up and comers just to wait for Pantoja to come back from an elbow injury at, he'll be 35, I think, or I think he already is 35. So maybe 36, depending on when his birthday is. And it doesn't mean he doesn't win when he comes back, but it's just kind of a hard sell, in my opinion, to keep Van on ice or whoever Josh Van, would be up against to keep them on ice as well. I just think it's a tough ask.
Yeah, I mean, he fought 5 times or I guess, 4 times this calendar year, but 5 times in 364 days. He's not going to not want to keep fighting that often, I wouldn't imagine. And like you said, there's so many guys who are moving up the rankings in the flyweight division, and there's another big fight that another fight that we'll talk about shortly that had implications among the top of the flyweight rankings. This upcoming weekend's main event is top of the flyweight rankings as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces already that I can't imagine the UFC be like, we'll just sit and wait for the possibility that Pantoja is healthy. And as a guy who wrestles and grapples and goes for submissions as often as he is, having a bum elbow like that doesn't make it any easier.
So it was all the more confusing when Dana White and like the UFC doctors were saying it's a shoulder injury. Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw that. And then like Pantoja's team had to come out and be like, no, his elbow definitely dislocated or broke or whatever. So I don't know. I just thought that whole thing was a bit weird and odd.
And even on the replay, you can see his elbow clearly pop out of place and pop back in.
Yeah, that was an absolute mess. And poor Megan in the post fight, they've got Megan O'Leary up there, and she says it's a shoulder. And like DC and Rogan are like, "Wow, my God, how's it a shoulder? How's it a shoulder?" And she's like, "That's just what I was. That's my job is to tell you what I was told." She's up there getting grilled about it, but clearly an elbow, and it's an unfortunate way for a title end or a title reign to go. Here is a question that I would like to pose for you guys. So let's say we allow Josh Van to defend the title with Pantoja sidelined. Regardless of who the challenger is, let's say it could be anybody. But let's say Van loses the title. He doesn't defend as a title and someone else takes it. Would you rather see Pantoja come back to fight for the title, or if Van is not the champion when he comes back, fight Josh Van as like a number one contender type thing? Which one of those two options would you rather see for the Pantoja return?
I was thinking about that. And you have to, I mean, that'd be a worst case scenario, I think, for the fans, just because, we were very excited for that Van Pantoja fight. So it depends who maybe wins the belt, but you'd have to give Pantoja the shot at the belt again. It's like he's owed the belt, not the Van fight necessarily. So I guess at that point, it would either be on Van to just win his next fight or try to, get back to the title. But I think you would have to give Pantoja the shot at the belt.
I'm going to kind of lean a little bit of the other way, where it's if Joshua Van loses, and again, it depends on who he loses to, because I guess the only 3 guys who really have a chance at it are going to be Tatsuro, Taira, Brandon Royval, and Manel Kape. As long as Royval doesn't end up being the champion, I think Pantoja gets the title shot right away. Only because we've seen that fight so many times already and nothing's changed in any of them. And it's been 3-0 sweep for Pantoja, I believe. But he hasn't fought Tatsuro Taira, hasn't fought Manel Kape, at least not recently. So it's one that I think he deserves the title shot, but as long as it's not Brandon Royval.
That's fair. I would lean towards giving him the title shot, but I definitely see the logic in saying we don't need to see the Pantoja Royval fight for a 17th time. I would understand that logic as well.
It's also, what if Royval does win and now he finally has one back? Are we going to see another rematch down the line again? It's when we're going to be getting to the reigns of Pantoja Royval 6.
That's fair. All right. Brandon, or we'll go down to the next flyweight fight on the card. Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Moreno. Tatsuro Taira became the first fighter to finish Brandon Moreno in his professional career. Did it with ground and pound from top back mount. And Tatsuro Taira now has elevated himself one step further up the flyweight rankings and is now knocking on the door of a title fight. Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. What did you make of Tatsuro Taira's victory?
I thought it was a good win. I mean, I'll start it with, I thought it was an early stoppage, so I thought that was pretty unfortunate. But I mean, the first round you really didn't get to see much. I know he landed the takedown, but got reversed pretty quickly by Moreno, where Moreno was in the more advantageous position, and then kind of locked in that submission for the next like 3 minutes. So that was kind of a dud of a round. I never really thought it was like crazy tight too. I know sometimes it sounded like the broadcast was saying like this fight's about to be over, but I never thought it was like crazy close. So there's kind of a wash of a first round a little bit, and then in the second round, same thing, going back and forth on the feet, and then another great takedown from Taira, and then he actually got the good position where he had Moreno flattened out and was starting to do the ground and pound. I just didn't think. I haven't watched it back, but I thought Moreno was defending himself, and he wasn't eating. He hadn't ate an insane amount of strikes yet. But what I kept saying was, I watched Terrence McKinney take 40 in a row off his face, and there was nothing. And then apparently Jan gets 10-8'd, and so there's no finish there. So I saw 10-8, and I saw someone take 40 uninterrupted, and then you called the fight on Moreno. I thought James said it best, based off positioning, not off of actual damage done. So that was the only thing. But overall, I mean, it's still, you're the first one to finish Moreno. You're the one that had him in that compromised position. So I think that's a great look from a prospect, because we've seen a lot of prospects get easily kind of dismantled by Moreno. So that was overall still a great performance for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's two prospects now in the flyweight division, 24-year-old champion, and now Tatsuro Taira at 25, just storming his way up the rankings. Kind of like, again, not that Joshua Van necessarily destroyed Pantoja, it was just a fluke, but Tatsuro Taira did a damn good job against Brandon Moreno, especially in that second round. Like you said, Anthony, the first round was kind of uneventful, to say the least. There's the one sub attempt and nothing else really happened. But it's one that, I don't know, I kind of expected more of it, and they were definitely getting into a groove, it seemed, in the second round. Then the finish came halfway through it, so I'm not really sure what to take away from this fight as much, apart from Brandon Moreno, for being as good as he has been for a while, just got beat by an up-and-coming guy who has inserted himself into the top of the rankings.
Yeah, I thought this first round was a little bit of a nothing burger, as much as, he's threatening the triangle, and there was a couple moments where he did some nice things with it, but it was really not much more from positional hold more than anything. And then the second round starts, and Moreno is the guy who starts the clinch in the second round, and to me that was an absolutely baffling thing to do, because we talked about it in the preview, but like Taira's, like, that was a potential X factor for him, was his clinch, and Moreno willingly goes to the clinch, and that's where he ends up on his back. And Tatsuro did a great job of transitioning immediately to a dominant position. And then once they were on the ground, he did a great job of continuing to get to dominant positions and continuing to threaten. So I thought the groundwork from Taira when he was in top position was really, really good. But my questions with Taira that kind of are what I think about when he's could potentially win a fight or lose a fight is how is he able to get to those ground positions where he can start using his jiu-jitsu. How good are his takedowns? Those things weren't really answered because I thought Moreno was the one who started the grappling, and then that allowed Taira to really take a large lead in this fight. So that I thought was unfortunate from like an evaluation standpoint of kind of questioning how the fight would go. I thought it was just a weird way for the fight to play out, and then I thought the stoppage was early as well. Um, we've seen these positional things before, and it's kind of a pet peeve, or maybe not a pet peeve, but every time we see one of these positional based stoppages, I lean towards the fighter getting more time to work out of the position. And, it's a fight that's maybe if it's the first fight on the prelims, we're having a different discussion. But this is a massive, massive, massive fight. This is guys' paychecks we're talking about. This is legacies we're talking about. This is potential to fight for a title. Like, there's a lot of stuff on the line here. Like, I'm not saying we needed to let Moreno take shots from that position for 30 seconds, but 5-10 seconds, he doesn't improve position, we're having a different discussion, and maybe I'd be fine with the stoppage. I'd have to obviously see what exactly happened in those moments, but I just think that I'm always going to lean towards more time to let a guy work, especially when it's a positional based issue. That's the number one issue at hand. And, if Moreno was in that position after getting dropped by like a knee on the feet, it's a different discussion, but that's not the discussion we're having. So I would lean towards giving him, even if it's not 30 seconds to a minute, but a little bit more time to work up.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't even think about that too. It's not even like he was compromised before that position. He went into that position relatively untouched throughout the fight too, and they called it. But um, I always think to your point of like, I mean, he's never been finished before too, so it's like it's not like he's someone too that always goes out there and is like getting finishers on a huge losing streak. That shocks me, but I always think back too to that Cannonier Imavov fight, where I always thought it was an early stoppage. It was also Cannonier's probably last chance to ever get to the belt. Like if he won that fight, and who knows? I think it was round 4, and Imavov was probably turning it on too. So round 5 could have looked different, but it's like it's tough. You just like that's probably his last chance to get to the belt, and this could have been Moreno's last chance to for another title fight too. So it's just those kind of things are unfortunate. Like I'd imagine when you look back on it, you would prefer it to be definitive, a definitive loss when you look back of thinking like, oh, well, this kind of was where it was at, where my last chance to win the belt was, or to get to a title shot was.
Yeah, and um, who was the referee in this fight?
It was Mark Smith.
Smith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, Mark
Herzog
Smith.
would have let that go.
Well, Herzog made the call on the prelims for the Saudi Cup fight. That was a weird one, wasn't it? Yeah, I never mind on Jason Herzog. I was just curious because I didn't remember, and it's always a discussion because there are weird fights where it's like, why are we stopping? And stoppages never make sense. Like there's some with Mark Goddard where it's like the Izzy Pereira one. And then you could look at different Mark Goddard fights where guys are taking more of a beating. And it's just like, where do we draw the line? If each ref had a different line, I'd be like, I get it. But it's the same refs being inconsistent with their own personal definition of when they need to stop the fight. And I think that is the most confusing part to me for just stoppages in general. And this is just kind of one piece of the puzzle. So, all right. One before we move on, is Tatsuro Taira the next title challenger for you guys, or is there a different name that you would deem more deserving? Do either of you guys have a strong take on that one?
Not quite. I was just gonna say. I mean, I thought Brandon Moreno should have had a title shot if he won that, and that would have been 3-fight win streak. I think is that only one for Taira? Was his last one Royval still right?
No, he
No.
beat Park Hyung Sung.
Oh, okay, so yeah, I think if I were to give Moreno, maybe a title shot with a 3-fight win streak, now Taira finally knocking off, one of those, top 3 contenders or whatever. Um, I think a title shot could be justified since we were mentioning um, Pantoja's going to be out, but I'm sure we can cover it more. The only other thing I could see is though depends on how the Royval Cup fight goes.
Now, I'm not opposed to a Royval and Van rematch.
Exactly for 5.
So, for 5 rounds. I'm here for that as well. And otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure if Manel Kape deserves a title shot if he beats Royval yet. I know Joshua Van got one off of it and all that, but I don't know if Tatsuro Taira jumps Brandon Royval either because he already lost to him once this past year.
Yeah, I'll give my opinions on how that fight goes later, but in my mind, we're looking at a guy that's beat Taira versus a guy who, in Royval, a guy who's beat Taira, or it'll be a guy who just beat a guy Taira lost to. And it's like Manel Kape, his issues are more in line of Arman Sarukian issues than in the cage deserving a title fight issue. His in the cage performances are all good, but it's a matter of getting there and everything that comes prior to that, and sometimes what comes after that, depending on the situation and the interview. But that's the Manel Kape problem. And another thing I will add, I think if you were to rank how excited you are for Kape versus Van, Royval versus Van, and Tatsuro Taira versus Joshua Van, maybe you could argue over 1 and 2, but I think a lot of people are going to be pretty unanimous that Tatsuro Taira is going to be the least exciting title fight out of those 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Fair enough. Probably.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I was going to add for that, because I'll tell you what, Kape and Josh Van is one hell of a fight. So that's kind of one that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't hate to see that.
Yeah, 2 guys just come out.
Kape fan too, and that one was like, I don't know, that one scares me a little bit too. I feel like Kape could maybe, get a shocker pull one out.
Yeah, 2 guys just going to throw it at each other and see what happens. That would be entertaining. Yeah. I do have a question. Like, we just talked about Taira. What do you think Brandon Moreno does next? Because I think that's a harder situation.
Yeah, it is. Didn't even think about it before you brought that up. Anthony, do you have anyone on the top of your head? I'll pull up the rankings here and see if I can conjure up a good idea.
No, not really. He's beat everyone and he's lost to a few. So he's fought everyone in that division. He's already beat your Albazis. I do like he beat Ursag, everything. Him and Royval have gone. I would say if he's trying to fast track, maybe the loser of Royval Kape, or if you wanted to kind of test him again, I still like AC Omabayev. Is one of my favorite fighters, kind of in the middle tier, or he was around 10 to 15 range. So I think that could be a fun one too. But
yeah, I think the highest ranked guy he has not fought is Manel Kape. So if Kape loses, you could go Kape Moreno. I think that makes sense. Otherwise, you're looking at Alsu Almabayev, but I think a Kiori Horiguchi versus Brandon Moreno would be a good bit of fun and would be a pretty good introduction for Horiguchi back into that top tier of fighter. He got some steam for a title fight for a second, but that didn't last past the Tatsuro Taira fight, and I don't think it's going to last past this weekend. I think he'll probably be number 3 in the pecking order at best, assuming we have an outright winner this weekend.
Yeah, again, I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys. I think it's either the loser this weekend, or honestly, I'd rather see Asulan Mabayev get it over maybe Brandon Royval, just because we've seen the Brandons fight before, but not saying that wouldn't be a fun fight. I just kind of like fresh matchups in the UFC.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Next fight on the card, Payton Talbott retired Henry Cejudo, and Henry Cejudo went out swinging. Ended up being a very fun fight, in my opinion. I really enjoyed this one. Very entertaining. They even rolled the video package for Cejudo at the end of the card, or at the end of the fight, which I didn't really see coming. I guess I probably should have, but the UFC's relationship with Cejudo hasn't necessarily been great. So it was kind of a question as to whether that was going to happen. But on the Payton Talbott side, he looked great. Walked out of there with a 30-27 victory. Anthony, you can lead us off here. What did you make of Payton Talbott?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I think we kind of said that the Cejudo was a bit of an odd matchup, and that it was, in some forms, a layup too, especially coming off, like you said, he was going to retire. But I thought he looked great in everything that actually happened in the octagon. With still showed that takedown defense that's been improving. Showed some pretty nice takedown offense. He took down Cejudo. I get it was his last fight, but that's something not everyone can say too. So I thought he looked good, and then the striking on top of that was great at all three levels, distance management, everything. I thought, Payton has a pretty diverse bag of strikes too. He was breaking them out. And then I think I want to say like he showed off some durability, but what do we? It's like 39 or however old Cejudo at the end of the third round, but he's at least entertaining for the crowd. He knew how to play it off by doing the Max Holloway point at the octagon and kind of just turning the last round into a little bit of a firefight too. So I thought overall just a great performance and a great showing for anyone that was watching.
Yeah, it also shows how much someone can change in a year. You go back and look at Payton Talbott's first fight this year against Rone Barcelos. He was taken to the ground and could do nothing about it. Now he's the one landing takedowns and controlling on the ground at times as well, which just shows that he has grown so much as a fighter in 1 year, which is impressive. I also think he is, like you said, Anthony, his chin didn't really get tested a whole lot by the punches of a 38-year-old. He did get his chin tested when he tried to do a celebration at the end and ended up eating shit and falling on his face. Don't know if you guys saw that, but
I didn't know.
Yeah, he tried to do like a spinning backflip and completely biffed it and just went face planting on the octagon. So
fair enough. I thought this was a great performance from Talbott, and I have been a little bit wishy-washy on him. Coming off Contenders, I liked what I saw. I think I had him in my second tier of prospects, closer to the top, so like a top 7-ish guy off his season of Contenders, or give or take. And then he showed some stuff grappling-wise that I didn't really like. I thought Barcelos had a chance to beat him. Barcelos did beat him, and then I was like, oh, God, that's bad. And then I picked Felipe Lima to beat him because I really liked Felipe Lima, and still do. He hasn't fought since, so no positive or negative from there. But he looked way better in the Felipe Lima fight, and those improvements really carried into this one. And that was pretty evident early. He hit that inside trip on Cejudo, which for those who don't know, that's like Cejudo's move. It's one of his best moves in his offensive wrestling arsenal, and he's an Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling. That he's not just anybody that you're hitting an inside trip on. You're hitting the guy with his own move. It really impressive stuff. I thought he got overzealous in the grappling. I will say there's some moments in there where, hey, we're still 6 inches taller, way more athletic, and 10 times better at striking. Yes, you took him down, but doesn't mean we have to turn this into you're not an Olympic gold medalist. You're still you. You just are better than you used to be. So I thought he got overzealous there. He got put to his back at one point. Didn't love the get up off his back. I think that's still a red flag moving forward. But like the things that he did show improvement in is takedown defense was way better. Takedown offense was way better. And I said this before the fight, I believe. He's used his athleticism. At least he's gotten much better at implementing his athleticism into grappling. Every time I've seen Payton Talbott fight, he's known how to be athletic and be a striker and merge those two things. In the Barcelos fight, he looked athletic. And then the second you started grappling, looked like he forgot how to be athletic still. I think now we're seeing more of that, using his athleticism and using his grappling and merging the two for some positives. And as far as striking goes, his striking's just great, and he's got great cardio, and I think he's pretty durable. This fight, he got hit a little bit, and I know Cejudo's punching power isn't anything to write home about, but he had been hit in previous fights as well. Took some shots in some previous fights, so he's got I think, a larger catalog than just this fight for the chin. So, like I said, I was lower on Talbott than most within the last 12 months, but his last two performances, I think both times I've left saying, this is exactly what I would have liked to see from him. So I am now in a much more positive place as far as Payton Talbott, the prospect, is concerned. Question is, who do you book him against next? Is he ready for that next step up in competition? That may be a different discussion, and we'll see where that ends up falling. But for right now, I'm very impressed with Payton Talbott.
I do like that they only moved him up to 12 and not up to where Cejudo is ranked in the top 10. I think that's a much more fair placement for him, considering Cejudo is retired now, and since he's come back to the UFC, hasn't won a single fight. I wouldn't mind seeing him against someone like Chito Vera, I think was the one he called out for. I think I saw that.
Did he really? I made a joke about that. That was who he should call out too.
I feel like I saw something about Cheeto's name being thrown around. If you want another test, maybe like a Rob Font or Mario Batista.
Payton's smart too. He knows how to work it. But that's it. I was also just gonna say too, real quick, that's why I thought that Barcelo's fight, kind of to James' point too. I thought he just looked lost on the ground. Like that was, but I remember after the fight, I was saying like, I didn't think it was the end of the world. Well, obviously because he lost his undefeated streak, which people care about so much. But I didn't think it was the end of the world because I thought he was trying in there the whole time. Like he never got like fully discouraged. He was still fighting to get up to his feet. He just couldn't quite do that. And then when he got to his feet, he was putting it on. And he even stuffed like one or two takedowns, I think, in the third, or maybe one, but then got taken down again, which takes whole two other minutes. So I saw that, and I think that is the importance of like being a prospect, is having those certain fights and learning, and and having those types of things play out in the octagon. And that's the other thing about being a prospect, is you can take pretty huge leaps. Still, you're still kind of like a moldable piece of clay compared to when you're 15 fights in or something, or even that's a lot, but even say you're a top 5 fighter, you're not really, unless you're Max Holloway, you're not really changing up. People tend to fight their same way, like every time. You kind of know what you're getting with them. But so that's what I just wanted to say too, when it comes to Payton. But yeah, for if Jerry, I didn't know if that was who he called out.
He said he was on some show and said he wants to fight a striker and wants either Zahabi or Cheeto.
Oh, wow.
Zahavi, I would be there for that.
Cheeto's also a great matchup for him. A guy who's going to stand there and not throw punches and kicks versus a guy who's going to throw a ton of punches and kicks. It's like, all right, I'll just take the guy who's going to be active. But I think Payton's in a pretty good spot where he's fought one guy in the rankings and he's retired. So we've got a clean slate to work with here as far as ranked guys go. So I'm not really too worried about who he fights next, honestly. You could, let's see, number 15 is Marcus McGee, and if that's the route they go, I'm not even mad at that. If you want to move them up and go Chito Vera, I'm not mad at that. I think there's a lot of routes you can go with Talbott, and I think they're all going to make sense. After just from what he showed as an entertainment perspective, I'm going to be interested to watch him fight, and what he showed from a growth perspective, I'll be interested to see what improvements or changes he makes before every fight. So those are two things that are going to keep someone like me coming back to watch for a guy like Talbott. So, and then on the Cejudo side, I just want to say, Cejudo has never been my favorite fighter. Never been a guy I'm pounding the table. Oh, let's get Cejudo in there. Let's get Cejudo in there. I wasn't, celebrating when he came out of retirement, but I think some of his accomplishments has really gotten to the point where they've been undersold. Olympic gold medalist, 2-division UFC champion. That's a ridiculous thing to do. That takes a ridiculous amount of work. And I think in there on Saturday, we saw kind of the mindset of, 39-year-old, completely outmatched in there. He's got pretty much both feet out the door at this point, but there were multiple times he was shown the door, but he opted to stay in there, keep fighting. Ended up being an entertaining fight where he took the brunt of the damage. He could have hung it up early. He decided not to, so he really showed off who he is as a fighter. And then, like I said, his accomplishments are incredibly undersold and just complete. For what he's done for the flyweight division, we talk about the flyweight division as, one of our favorites often in a division that's on fire. And he did help save that division. And it's a lot nicer when he's speaking about that and like happy that he did that and not like using it to talk down to other flyweights. He has no reason to do that anymore now that he's retired. And he was just kind of honest at the press conference about how that was something he was proud of, keeping that division intact to get more fighters opportunities. So I think his legacy in the sport is maybe not one that everyone will look back on and love. Maybe people don't love how he fights. Maybe people don't love his attitude or character. But I think the history of the sport that we cover every week is better now because of what Cejudo did in his span in the sport. So, like I said, might not be my favorite fighter, but I am kind of sad to see Henry gone in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, you also just fair play to him for retiring and then coming back 3 years later and fighting Aljamain Sterling, Merab Dvalishvili, Song Yadong, and now Payton Talbott. They just fed him. Every fight was like, okay, if you lose this, you're going to have to retire, or this guy's going to kill you and make you retire. Kept going forward, kept fighting, and yeah, now he's gone.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about it a little bit last week too, but it's he's a tough one, like you're saying, James. He's especially to more casual fans or people getting into it. Like the King of Cringe era was a bit much for me, but I was there for some of it, a little bit. Like I like some of the things you would do, but a lot of times you went overboard. But he would be like, he's a hard person to like quantify like how much he really meant to the UFC or to his division for sure. To so other people if you kind of weren't there for it.
Yep. All right, last fight on the UFC 323 main card. We had Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov fighting to a draw. Lovely. A pretty clear draw as well in my mind. Think Jan controlled the 1 and 3. Guskov landed a shot in round 2 that put Jan on his butt, which surprised Jan didn't go out cold considering he's 42 years old. But Guskov unable to get the finish. One of the most excruciating non-finishes I've ever seen in my life. It's like, dude, throw ground and pound. The refs will stop the fight if you just throw punches. So all you had to do was throw punches, but he tried to methodically pick his shots with ground and pound, and that is never the answer to ground and pound. The answer to ground and pound is pound, and it's hence the name. But he did not do those things. So we walked out with a draw here. Jerry, take it away. What'd you make of Bogdan Guskov versus Jan Blachowicz?
I mean, you pretty much summed it up. Jan won the first and third, not easily, but relatively convincingly, and then just got smothered for virtually 5 minutes in the second round. And I don't know how you don't finish him. With that being said, it was Jason Herzog refereeing, so maybe if he was throwing ground and pound, we still would have gone to a draw. But it was one that neither of them looked like they wanted to win in that third round.
Jan looked gassed, but if that round went 30 more seconds, Jan, that was the one where Jan dropped him like with 10 seconds left. Yeah. Me and some of my friends, we were watching at a bar. Second we had Jan, so we got really happy for a second there. We were also very unhappy during that second round, thinking it was over. So
it was just a weird fight.
Yeah, it was overall. It was a really weird fight. I thought the first round was really close too. I didn't know who they were going to give it to. I didn't know if it was my bias. I definitely had it Jan a little bit though, but I had no idea who they were going to actually give it to. So, I mean, you had a competitive round, kind of one-way traffic one round, and then a little bit less one-way traffic the other round or for the third round. So, I mean, it wasn't a bad way to open the card at all, I will say.
Yeah, as much as I didn't seem thrilled, I just hate draws.
Yeah.
As much as I didn't seem thrilled about the recap, it was a fun fight watching that fight. The only downside is round 2 when it's like, dude, get the finish. Like, try and finish the fight. Like, that was really, from a viewing perspective, the only downside. But it did end up being an entertaining fight as much as, I can talk crap about it being a draw. The draw is the right call, and it was a fun fight. Both things can be true at the same time. So I think not a bad one to start the card. All right. Let's hit some final thoughts for UFC 323. We had a fairly action-packed set of prelims and early prelims. Jerry, you can lead us off here. What stood out to you on the rest of this card?
I think my favorite fight of the whole card was Iwo Baranowski and Ibo Aslan. As I said to someone I was kind of watching it with, it looks like Rock'em Sock'em robots. There was no strategy behind it. It's let's just go and throw, and one of us is going to go down. Ended up being Aslan who went down, despite getting a knockdown himself and sending Baranowski to the ground a couple times. So I think that fight was just so much fun to watch from a chaotic standpoint. The other one, I mean, you already kind of mentioned Terrence McKinney getting his face smashed in, yet somehow it was a submission and not a knockout that finished him. So that's always funny.
Yeah. I think I put in the chat, I was like, I would have been irate if I had like Duncan knockout or something, or fight to finish by knockout, because that was insane.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but McKinney quit. Like,
yeah, but he does it every fight. It's awesome. Like if he did it once, I'd be okay. Like, he does it every fight. He goes absolutely balls to the wall crazy. Like, you can't say he's not trying to win that fight for 2 minutes. But then as soon as the fight goes like halfway past round 1, he always gives up.
Yeah.
I'm
and like more fighters give up, I think, than people realize in there. But like, he's the most obvious. Like, oh, he just quit, and then he's still getting punched in the head. It's like, hey, he quit. Yeah. It's like, stop the fight. He quit fighting back.
His goal is to never see a round 2, and I respect it. Like,
yeah,
it's insane.
Just looking at like the history of his fights recently, this one went 2.5 or 1.5 rounds. He lost. His 2 fights previously were under half a round and he won. Then there's the Ribovic one where he lost in 37 seconds. And his only losses are really coming in fights that go over half a round, which it's crazy how common that trend is for him. And that's why he's fun to watch.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, his like 30-second submission of Farasiam also aging incredibly well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible too, because I was like, I like Ziam, and then I was like, okay, McKinney, like, come on, he's either like, this should be good, and then nope. Unfortunately, it was one of the performances where he wins in 30 seconds. So I was like, okay, yeah, it's a coin flip. I'd never bet on him.
Farasiam did look pretty good this weekend. I'm a big Nazim Sadikov guy, and oh boy, he pretty thoroughly controlled that one. And stoppage, not a fan of that stoppage. You know how many times I've seen fighters like get their head just pounded in for the last 10 seconds just because refs won't stop the fight with 10 seconds left, and Herzog is stopping the fight as the bell goes off to end the round. It's like, are you kidding me, dude? I watched you scrape Yan Xiaonan's lifeless body off the octagon so we could keep fighting, and now we're stopping a fight with 0 seconds left in the round. It's like,
sounds a little suspicious.
Yeah. And this one, there may have been no suspicious activity,
No.
But the problem is Herzog now, he used to be like perfect, and now he's got to kind of make up for his like suspicious ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, he just has to mess up enough to make it look incompetent. So like, this is a great opportunity to be like, oh, I'm going to stop it. Like right as the round is ending. And now my Jared Cannonier stoppage doesn't look as bad. And it's like tremendous 4D chess. All alleged, by the way. Alleged for
Yeah, yeah,
4D chess.
I had those were the 3 fights I watched. I started in the prelims, so I couldn't remember too because I did thought Xian looked great, but I do remember. Yeah, it was the 1 second right before, and then the only other one that I've watched for the prelims we haven't talked about was the Macy Barber. Just an absolute dog. She was, to me, one of the most entertaining, you know, women's fighters, but specific, yeah, flyweights, and also Korean Silva, like illegally kicked her twice. One of them, like, definitively, like, rocked Macy Barber, and that's insane that we didn't take a point for that.
Yep.
I can't remember. I think I was working while I was trying to, while I was watching that fight, or I was like on the way home for a part of it. But I was asking my friends, is like, did they not take a point? And they said no, and it's like that's interesting. She like mule kicked her, stumbled her, and like took 2 minutes to recover. And I like if we're not taking a point for that, I don't know. And it was the second time too. But overall, I thought Barber looked great on the ground. Brawler actually does damage. Was going for some pretty tough ground. If Guskov had Barber's ground and pound, he would have won that fight. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I do love. I like that fight as well. And like Mark Smith, what are we doing? What are we doing, Mark? Like she got warned for the up kicks in the first round, and then she kicks her twice in the second round, and then we don't take a point. And meanwhile, we're like rushing her back into action. Thankfully, Macy's a dog, so she's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll go fight." Like, yeah, that's fine. And they didn't give her the position back. She was on top and got kicked out of top position. So she lost position and didn't get a point. I'm not saying you need position and a point.
but one or the other.
Yeah, you can't not get either. And then as Joe Rogan's like, hey, why'd you lose the position? Because that's the type of thing Joe will just lose his mind about on the broadcast. Yeah. He's like, why'd she not get in the position back? As Joe's losing his mind about her not getting the position, Macy Barber, duck under, bam, massive takedown. And Joe goes, she'll get herself back in top position. And it's like, yes, she will, Joe. That is the Macy Barber experience. And Macy Barber, for that reason, is one of my favorite female fighters because she is aggressive. She is a dog. She throws ground and pound. She throws hammers. And like Karine Silva is like a girl who's like, she's quite large for that weight class. And like, that's not a girl you can just push around with physicality. But Macy Barber did it anyways. She's just decided that she was going to go be more physical and toss Karine Silva around. And she did. And she was victorious that way. And massively impressive performance for Macy. I hope she gets a big fight as a result. So I'm pumped for Macy.
Yeah, I mean, she moved up into the pound for pound rankings, which that doesn't all mean all that much. But the fact she wasn't there before is kind of surprising considering the state of some of the women's MMA divisions.
Yeah, the women's pound for pound should be like all 125ers minus like 2 girls in the strawweight and 2 girls in bantamweight. Like roughly. I'd have to double check, but it should be like the 125 division.
You mean you don't think Raquel Pennington should be higher than Macy Barber?
I
don't even want to think about the women's pound for pound rankings.
This is the first time I've looked at it in a long time.
I forgot that was
ugly.
I was genuinely confused. They put her in the pound for pound rankings. Like I was like, who did she pass? She's not even have a belt.
Yeah, it's probably better than when they mixed them back in the day. But ever since they separated the men's and women's, everyone's like, nobody even gives the slightest shit about
what is she, 103 on the list?
All right. The final thought for me. Jalen Turner returns from retirement, beats the hell out of Edson Barbosa. Hats off to him. Edson lets hang it up, and while Edson hangs it up, Marvin, you watch and realize you need to do the same thing. So those are my ending final thoughts. Great to see Jalen Turner back though, and let's get him a fun fight. Can we please? Esteban Ribovic, maybe? Just a guy that may make a level of sense. There's a lot of guys, but there's enough bangers in the lightweight division where we got to get Jalen Turner like back in there ASAP.
No favors.
No,
Hey,
no
you're
favors.
fresh back from retirement. That's been Reva, fight of the night. You ready to get hit 100 times?
Yes, he is. We're gonna. I love Jalen Turner, but this is the violence weight division, and we need you to go be violent. If you have enough violence from Jalen Turner, and we can have some interesting conversations about the BMF title, but we're a ways away. But you just go be violent, Jalen, and see where it gets you.
I was gonna say screw it. Put him up against Michael Chandler. Loser retires.
Oh god,
that would be violent.
Yeah.
He would slaughter Michael Chandler.
Oh, I know.
He might beat Chandler worse than he did Barbosa, but
yeah,
that's a whole nother discussion.
And as far as Vettori goes, he needs to leave. He needs to hang him up. It was such a bad performance.
Yeah. Vettori, quite durable, but the brain is still in there rattling when you get hit in the head all fight long. So hang it up.
The other one I wanted to say, Manuel Torres beat the living brakes off of Grant Dawson.
Yeah, that was I had like a small amount on Manuel Torres KO, and I was like, oh, I should have put 2 zeros at the end of my bet. That was one of the best bets I've ever made, and I didn't have nearly enough money on it.
I can't remember if I saw it. I'll have to check back.
He knocked him down and then just hammer fist after hammer fist after hammer fist until he was pulled off.
Grant Dawson attempted 0 takedowns, not a 1. So that was interesting. All right. Let's end the show with the UFC Vegas 112 main event. Boy, we're getting up there in numbers for UFC Vegas. This week we have Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval. Absolute banger. Great main event to end out the year. Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off. What do you make of Brandon Royval getting back in there and taking on Manel Kape?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it earlier, so I won't go too long. We were saying, for the round robin of who possibly could be in line to fight Van, I think we would all be happy with any of these fights. Whoever wins this fight specifically, this should be a fun striking matchup. These are two of the more entertaining people in the division, so it's not a bad way to end off the year. And it does really make you more excited too. I'm glad there's some stakes to this fight too, because we'll be excited to see who could possibly fight Josh Van. I will say I'm probably going Royval. I also thought Kape cheated against AC Almavaev and never got caught last fight. I poked him and raked him 3 times, but that's besides the point. So I am excited to see. We always joke we'll see if this fight ends up happening. Hopefully, Kape makes it to the octagon. So,
and we've got roughly 2 days from when we're recording this, so a lot can happen in that time with Manel Kape. But I love this fight. I think it's just going to be a slugfest. We'll see if Royval changes up anything from his slugfest with Joshua Van, and maybe it throws in a takedown attempt here or there. I can't imagine he will, but. Let's go. This is a great fight and great way to end the year of a hell of a year where we saw, I think, every single belt change hands. And at least, was it all but, I think it was all of them but Valentina Shevchenko. I think that's the only one that didn't change hands this year.
What a shame. What an absolute shame.
What a bummer.
Fjord didn't break her nose in the first round.
No.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
That is a stat. I say if Manel Kape pulls out, we do a nice little impromptu Joshua Van title defense. Wouldn't that be a great? Honestly, it would never actually happen. That'd be a hilarious way to
end the year,
kickstart a title reign, and end the year. An impromptu, short notice title fight for Josh Van. Betting lines have this one line plus 230 Brandon Moreno, minus 310 Manel Kape. Boy, that's a big number on Brandon Royval. I will just say, I like both of these a lot. These are two guys that I tend to pick to win more often than I pick them to lose. So it puts me in a tough one for our preview this week. And I think Manel Kape could probably hit Brandon Royval really hard in the head in the first couple rounds. but Royval's a maniac, and if we get to rounds 3, 4, and 5, boy, he might just pace the hell out of Manel Kape. So I think it's pretty definitive of how this fight's going to go. It's either going to be early round Kape dominance, and maybe that turns into Royval kind of just winning the late rounds and Kape taking a decision, or it turns into Royval winning the late rounds and getting a stoppage. I think that's kind of your potential outcomes for how this fight goes. I think all roads are full of entertainment. Maybe the one dark horse is Royval jumping on a ghillie or something, but I think it's going to be an entertaining fight. I'm probably going to lean towards taking Royval. I think part of that is I've still got the Petr Yan plus 325 running through my veins. So I'm chasing another one. That may be part of my logic here, but I'll probably have Royval as my selection. But it will certainly be one that doesn't come with a ton of confidence, just because I think fading Manel Kape in full confidence isn't really a fruitful endeavor long term. So I'll have Royval probably by a late round stoppage.
Yeah, I think Royval gets it done. And I want to just say one more thing on this fight card. A Bobby King Green sudden short notice fight
against Lance Gibson, a just Bellator like staple all of a sudden in the UFC to fight Bobby King Green, who can he take a punch? I don't know. Will he get punched? I also don't know, because he might just bob and weave for 3 rounds and not get hit in the head once. It's quite an interesting matchup.
Yeah, and the fact that I think that was announced pretty recently, so
yeah,
random.
Yep. It was announced recently, because I was like, oh, 5-fight main card. That's one less full fight. I got a preview for the preview, one a little bit less work for me. And then they were like, boom, Bobby Green versus Lance Gibson. Lance Gibson, never watched him fight in my life, so I'll have to do some tape study on him. So the UFC did me no favors with that fight booking and card placement, I will just say. All right. That is the end of this week's episode. Make sure to check out the preview that we've mentioned. It'll have our picks for the main card as well as the rest of the fights. And make sure to tune in next week. Should be back next week. We'll have to iron out our plans for the no UFC weeks coming forward, but there will be content from us. We'll probably, the two that I think we have pretty hard cemented episodes are going to be season or yearly awards and predicting future champions. Those are 2 that we did last year and 2 that we had fun with last year. So those will be a point of the winter in the coming void of fights. But we'll probably have a couple more episodes as well. So even though there will be no fights, make sure to still check out Vendetta Sports Media and check out the podcast, and make sure to leave a like on this episode, and we will see you next week.